Well, that was Sean Spicer following the news that the U.S. has dropped the, quote, mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. Spicer also addressing the recent policy shifts by the president. Let's go to Katie Freites and Jillian Melcher. He was certainly, Sean Spicer seemed to be a little bit put off with respect to the idea that President Trump is flip-flopping on certain issues. We know that every president evolves. We also know that President Trump is a man of decision, a businessman who makes quick decisions, and he changes his mind when he sees something is not working. So, Katie, do you think that that's going to be good enough with respect to his core supporters, particularly those in Congress, who he needs to help him push through legislation?
Well, we'll see. I mean, part of this is, he said, making deals, and part of that is compromise, perhaps maybe realizing you're wrong or giving more information after the fact and changing your opinion. That's what happens, and that's part of being a responsible politician. A lot more people probably should do that. But part of this, with Obamacare, with everything else, he has to be able to work with the Freedom Caucus. He has to be able to work with the Thursday Group. These are these people who have just said no to everything he's wanted to do, and unless he can get them in line, Obamacare, tax reform, XIM, everything's going to be a mess, and Democrats aren't going to have to do anything to be able to win in the next cycle.
Jillian, the market's been under a lot of pressure, in part since that week where Obamacare's replacement went up in flames. Investors shifted to bonds, started selling equity mutual funds, and just today our session started falling apart as news of the mother of all bombs started to make the waves. Now, a lot of anxiety out there. Do you think that at least what we're hearing from Sean Spicer will help to alleviate some of that, or are we going to need to hear maybe from President Trump on some of these things?
I think we're going to need to hear from President Trump on some of these things. I mean, Sean Spicer this week has proved to be a very ineffective communicator. We saw with Syria a very strong stance, but all of a sudden we weren't talking about Syria, we were talking about Spicer and his Hitler comments. He proved to be a distraction at a moment that could have been a moment of strength for the Trump administration, and I'd expect them to be looking at that as well.
Jillian, I'll stick to you for 1 second. I'm not a fan of the Exim Bank, and I've said so for a long time. I think it's crony capitalism. Boeing and Caterpillar, they get the lion's share of this money. I understand to a degree why some people may back it, but I think it's a farce that it's out there to help for the small businesses. And that's what we heard, at least on the campaign trail. This is going to be another bone of contention. Sean Spicer evaded the question at least half a dozen times today, but it's not going to go away. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree with you on this. I think there's no reason for taxpayers to be backing loans that couldn't have been secured privately. This absolutely goes to big corporations. I do think on the flip side that the Exim Bank is often conflated with the trade issue in general, and that's something that American consumers do benefit from in the form of cheap commodities.
Katie, your overall thoughts here? I mean, we've entered into a phase of anxiety, if you will. I thought Rex Tillerson did an amazing job. Nikki Haley did an amazing job. I thought last week was perhaps one of the best weeks for President Trump since that joint session speech, and yet and still there's more uncertainty at this very moment than there has been through the early part of this administration.
Well, there's always going to be uncertainty when something like this happens. When an approximately 21,000-pound bomb is dropped in Afghanistan, everyone is going to be wondering what's going on for a little bit until we get more information. But Trump has proved himself to be a 360-degree pivot from Barack Obama. He's drawing red lines with Syria. He's taking action when action needs to be done. He's putting his foot down and saying chemical weapons attacks will not stand. You kill a Green Beret, we'll fight back. And I think a lot of Americans will find confidence in that kind of action.
I think you're 100% right, and I think President Trump wants to get things done, and that's something that will come across sooner to more and more folks. All right, right now,